And now we are going to talk about it with journalist Javed Rana, who is joining us from Pakistani capital live. Well, Javed, thank you so much for joining us here on A News once again. We have been talking about and showing the footages of what is happening in Gaza right now. Israeli military continues its relentless attacks in the occupied Gaza Strip. Lastly, targeting food and aid distribution. So how has the world responded to such gruesome attacks so far?
For the world, it is a simply new normalization. Killing a Palestinian, their mass starvation, is something completely normal. Have you found any meaningful reaction from Europe, any European country? Have you found any meaningful reaction from Washington? No, they are part and parcel of this genocidal campaign. There are three weapons of this genocidal campaign that we see currently on the ground. One is the starvation. Obvious, from March 2nd this year till now, no trucks of aid, food was delivered inside Gaza. In between, there has been this so-called Gaza Foundation, which is run by Israel, the apartheid state, and the USA. They were killing machine. They had a death traps. I mean, so far, more than 1,000 people have been killed who went there to get some food. So I think that is the second part of a kind of a killing machine. And the third, we already know that it's a ground, and more particularly, this is the air campaign by the apartheid state. As a result of which, 60,000 people, these are the confirmed statistics, you know it, people have been killed. More than 143,000 people have been injured or wounded. I think nearly 95% of Gaza have been completely destroyed. But again, Palestinians are not just statistics. They are not just figures. Every next day, these figures are being upgraded. Palestinians are human beings. But they're being treated far less than animals, even far less than insects. Animals have their rights in Europe, but for Europe, they don't see that the Palestinians are human beings. We have to see why these people are being so much discriminated, why this genocidal campaign goes unnoticed. People inside apartheid state are simply, they are indifferent to what is happening in occupied Gaza. Reason being is that over the period of the decades, they have been radicalized, they have been brainwashed through the syllabus, where they target Arabs, that Arabs are your enemy. They're not talking about Palestinian in their syllabus. They're talking about Arabs. They're talking about Muslims. And that is a part of a greater geostrategic agenda of the apartheid state, whereby they have to basically expand the territories to all Arabs. So that hatred level among the population is a must. This is the core reason. And the second part is the question that you raise is a critically important, and that is why the Europe is silent, why the rest of the world is silent. The reason is that these Zionists, they have taken over all geostrategic positions in Washington, in Europe. You must have heard these Epstein files. The man who was engaged in I would say hundreds of women were raped in a very systematic manner, sometimes through their consent and sometimes through their forcibly by Jeffrey Epstein. And among the clients that he had, President Donald Trump, and so many other members of the Congress, so many other European leaders. I can't say about the Arab leaders. So again, they are all compromised. They are silent. So everybody, so far as the power circles in the world are concerned, apart from few Muslim leaders, they are part and parcel of this larger campaign of Israel, whereby they are killing people, they're creating conditions to force them to leave Gaza. And if if no other country is willing to accept them, then obviously they will die. Now, this is a mass starvation. The figures that we are getting is a 500,000. I think the figure is far bigger. Now, journalists are dying. because they don't have anything to eat. Who is going to report this larger genocidal campaign? Medical staff, they are dying. They're getting fainted in whatever the number of the hospitals they are, probably hardly few hospitals. So again, there is no medicine, there is no food, there is no water. The only water that is the seawater, which is not drinkable, which means those people who are drinking this seawater, they are also dying. So we exactly don't know the scale of this, how many people have been killed. 113 number is the official number, but what is the unofficial number? Because everything is not being reported. The number of the journalists who are working there, I think they're also shrinking. Apartheid Israel has already killed nearly 250 journalists there, and now remaining journalists who are there, probably they're dying now. They're dying with this mass starvation campaign. Even AFP is now complaining that their media team is dying with the hunger.
Well, the hunger being a weapon towards these people is a humanitarian disaster, yet the world seems to not really acknowledge the situation. Most recently, the French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot called upon Israel's allow to access to the foreign media, though. Why do Israel not want the Western media to report from Gaza, in your opinion?
The reasons are quite obvious. Because by and large, I think Al Jazeera and many other channels, particularly some of the Turks channels and some of the Palestinian indigenous media, they remain the only source of the information to the world outside. But again, they have the limitations. They need food to survive. They need space to survive. Now there is obviously extraordinary situation. It's a famine. It's already famine, and there's a mass starvation campaign. There's, again, the point that I was already raising. So now I think it is a matter of time when the number of the people who will be dying because of starvation, that will be more than the number of the people who are being killed every next day by Israel through its airstrikes. This is an extraordinary situation. I think the word emergency is a small word to explain the scale of the mass starvation. But again, who is going to listen them? Arabs, no, they would not listen them. Trillions of dollars are being invested in the USA by the Arab leaders. In return of what? They have not been able to even secure the ceasefire. The reason is because the ceasefire is essentially for 60 days, because after 60 days, that there would be lease of life for the 60 days, and after that, then there will be again a resumption of the killing campaign. Israel is not listening to anyone, because at all strategic places in the world, they have placed these European leaders, these Western leaders, and all they can do, they will make a statement, but they would not sanction Israel. They would not suspend the supply of the weapons to Israel. They would not suspend the sharing of the intelligence to Israel. Their manpower is there. There's a larger agenda. Basically, there is a fear of Islam. This is a very bitter reality. If you talk to these Western leaders, analysts, informally, it's not just Palestine, because Hamas is Islamist, they have Islamic credentials. They have to eliminate it. UAE wants Israel to eliminate Hamas, no matter how many Palestinians are dying. UAE is hands in glove with Israel. They don't want it. And even Hamas has blamed UAE that UAE has an espionage network inside Gaza, which is directly reporting to Israel. Saudi Arabia has provided supply route to apartheid state. Whenever there were attacks in the Red Sea by the Houthis, Israel trade was not disrupted. It was channeled through Saudi Arabia, went from there, it routed to Jordan, from there to the West Bank, and then to the mainland, apartheid Israel. So again, these countries are part and parcel in the crimes. And so far as Jordan is concerned, Jordan was basically had a air defense shield. It was trying to stop, and they did stop many missiles coming from Iran to apartheid state. what are the stakes of the Jordan, why it was stopping. If it was a breach of its sovereignty, may I ask, what was at that particular point of time, then it was allowing Israel's missile attacks, air strikes from over space. Again, they have institutionalized hypocrisy. These Arab leaders are they are responsible for this genocide.
Well, that is the hypocrisy that we are seeing as in Gaza right now, and it is killing the lives, it is ending the lives of people, which is something that we should underline. Also, in addition to that depiction, Netanyahu's government have been facing immense pressure from both inside and outside of the country. What factors do you think enable him continuing his campaign in the Middle East?
I think his government is going to last. I can't say for a longer time, but certainly he has at least 3 months time period, because the Israeli parliament, Knesset, it's going to be on summer vacation, which means for the next 3 months, his government seems to be safe, despite the fact that two what they call as a far-right smaller political parties, they have withdrawn their support, but at the same time, they have not said that they would support any no-confidence motions against him. So again, I don't foresee Netanyahu government collapsing anytime soon, but there is a possibility that he may call for a general election, by-elections, because he feels that this is the time that the public sympathies may be with him, given the fact that he has conducted a genocide inside Gaza, and partially also there has been also massacres in parts of occupied West Bank, and then they are also propagating that they have destroyed Iran's nuclear program, which is not a truthful picture. I mean, with these kind of slogans, I think he may call for elections. And again, Syria is the now next target of Israel's aggression, and we have seen that it has been using these Druze, the very small minority, which does not even make up the 3% of the Syria, and it has managed to create rift among many smaller sects and using them against the larger Sunni population. And the force that Israel is using is a massive airstrikes. So again, it is going to be a very difficult situation for the Turkey, because Turkey has hugely invested politically, also militarily in the past on Syria, and it was Turkey's role because of which there was some semblance of peace in Syria. And now Israel, after destroying that peace, I think the Ahmed Shah was trying to stabilize Syria's economy, was trying to stabilize Syria politically, but now there is a destructive force, which is Israel. It has occupied a substantial chunk of the territory of Syria, from the southern part of Syria, onwards from the Golan Heights, and then using the Druze community that it would protect the Druze community. It is a complete nonsense. Israel has been discriminating the Druze community inside apartheid state, and now it wants to protect Druze community in Syria. Actually, it wants to expand, it wants to divide Syria into at least 4 parts. And they want to give a dominating role to the minority groups. So, and I think this is where probably Turkey will have to take a strategic decisions, which may involve militarily supporting Syria, providing weapons, supplying latest weapons, missiles. I think only that way probably Israel's aggression inside Syria can be stopped. Otherwise, it will continue to occupy more and more territories and encourage minority groups which have no public support even in their own community members. They will be misused as is being happening further, and that means I think the strategic interests of Turkey are at stake in Syria.
Well, the stake is higher than ever in the Middle East, as you have said. How has the Israeli military operations across the Middle East undermined efforts in establishing wider stability, would you say?
Israel has played havoc with the peace of the Middle East. It's pursuing its expansionist agenda. It's which everybody now knows that it's pursuing a greater Israel's agenda. Something which many call it in the past that it's a conspiracy theory. Israel would never do it. I think the facts on the ground are not very clear. Netanyahu has been saying very proudly that under his administration, the territory of Israel has been expanded to Syria, to the Lebanon, towards Gaza, and also I think there was a resolution which is non-binding, legally speaking, in the Knesset, which called for annexing occupied West Bank into the mainland Israel. I think practically, virtually, West Bank has already been annexed. But again, if there has to be some legal formality, they will fulfill that formality in a not that distant future. So Israel's agenda is clear. Israel has gained more territory. It has militarily gained. It has not politically gained. But again, the bigger problem is that all Muslim countries, they look up to their national interest. They are not looking at the collective interests of the Muslims. As a result of which, now every country in the neighborhood of the apartheid Israel has been suffering. Now it is the turn of Syria after Lebanon. Again, after Syria, then it will be Egypt, and until and unless Israel is stopped militarily, I don't foresee that this expansionist agenda of Israel can be stopped because Israel only understands the language of force. The reason there was a ceasefire agreement brokered by the US between Iran and Israel was simple because Iran's missiles technology, particularly its hypersonic missiles attacks inside apartheid Israel, caused a massive destruction. I think it was the scale of the Iranian retaliation which forced Israel to go for a ceasefire. Otherwise, Israel would have continued its military campaign inside Iran. So again, the country which understands the language of force must be responded back with a force. But what has happened over the period of time during last 2 years that the Muslim leaders have not been able to come up with a concerted response, even not a political response. They make a political statement like many analysts make their political statement with no action on the ground. Even there could have been a trade bloc of Israel. That did not happen. Rather, behind the scene, these Arab countries have facilitated the trade supplies. Again, in that context, I think basically the first bloc to be criticized have to be these Muslim leaders. They are responsible. We actually look at the West because the West has projected itself over the period of time that it respects for the humanitarian values, it respects for the freedom of expression, freedom of association. We know that is just meant for their own people. It is not meant for the Muslims and outside the Western world. So in a broader context, I believe that over the period of time, if Israel is not stopped militarily, or if there is no trade bloc of Israel, Israel would not stop its aggression anywhere in the Middle East. After Syria, I believe is going to be Egypt. Lebanon is already being targeted unfrequently.
Well, let's talk about the Arab countries as well, because in the region we are seeing the difference in the shapes as we know that Israeli actions in Syria. What projections do you think they share about the future of the Middle East?
Well, let's look at the so-called vision of the Arab leaders. I would not call the Arab countries because the population is obviously pro-Palestine. These Arab leaders, they have a vision that these political leaders who have Islamic credentials, they should be discouraged. The reason is they believe that these Akhwan al-Muslimin, which is translated as a Muslim Brotherhood, they have their secret branches by and large in all these Arab countries. If Hamas survives, that means this could possibly expand to the rest of the Arab world. From Syria's experience, I think it was the great efforts on the part of President Tayyip Erdogan that Ahmadul Shara managed to convince Arab leaders that he is not a threat to them. He is not going to play any role in any conspiracy to launch any Arab Spring against them. Nonetheless, they do not trust Ahmad Shara. It was efforts on the part of the Turkey because of which Donald Trump removed sanctions. And I think it was the strategy of Turkey through which I believe Ahmad Shara implemented, as a result of which Europe also removed those sanctions. But so far as Arab leaders are concerned, they are still they are adopting still wait and see policy. And that is where the real problem lies, because UAE feels very much threatened. UAE wants, like Israel, some kind of a minority political leaders in Damascus, because that can serve better political and geostrategic interest of UAE and other Arab leaders, and more particularly their ally, the apartheid state. We have to see the broader picture, and the broader picture is that the so-called national interest of these Arab leaders, I would call them personal interest of these Arab leaders, they are dictating the overall Middle East policy. And that policy revolves around their so-called ideology that all these leaders which have Islamic credentials, they should not stay in power. Despite the fact that Ahmad Shara has completely evolved himself. He has projected himself as a leader who's a more acceptable to all these minorities. We have seen the conspiracies against him. And my understanding of the situation is that the agenda of Turkey and the agenda of the Syrian leadership to stabilize Syria politically, I think that is being jeopardized by Israel. And we see the Americans are silent. Reason is that the Americans' leadership is being controlled by the Zionist network. Now, the only advantage to the Palestinian is that the public opinion has completely changed in favor of Palestinians against the genocide, against the Zionist network, which stand exposed in the West.
Javed, thank you so much. But we had a really fruitful conversation, so thank you so much for joining us here on A News.
The growing tide of anti-Israel sentiments. What you see behind me is just tip of the iceberg of what is happening in the country. More than half of $52 billion black CIA budget is spent on espionage network in Pakistan. How would you handle it?
The US has looked upon Pakistan as an ally at one point and then as an enemy at the same time.
That is going to be the first legal reason on the basis of which he is going to be instantly ousted by the Supreme Court of Pakistan.
Joining us live, Javed Rana, who's an expert on politics and geostrategic issues.
In the world politics, which is not being driven by any moral principle, it is being driven by the hard geostrategic realities. In a broader picture, more countries would aspire to have nuclear weapons.